into the dirt, into anything that wasn't her. Her father stood near the edge of the crowd, puffed up with drink and spite. His hands waved wide, as if presenting a prize animal at auction. "Take her, anyone who wants her," he shouted. "Strong back, silent mouth, won't cost you much. Hell, I'll take the best offer right now." Laughter roared louder. A boy no older than 12 pointed and yelled, "What happened to her face?" Her father didn't hesitate. She burned it, years ago, set the kitchen on fire, killed her sister, too, the pretty one. He spat in the snow. This one's nothing but a scar walking. Useless. A curse. The laughter turned uglier, sharper. A woman muttered, "Poor thing should have burned with the house." Martha shut her eyes. The scar stretched tight across her left cheek, throbbing as though it remembered the flames. The rope burned her wrists. The cold ate her toes until she felt nothing. Then silence, not the silence of mercy, the silence that comes when something stronger enters. Boots. Heavy, steady, deliberate. Each step cut through the tension, crushing laughter mid-breath. Spurs clinked sharp as teeth. Martha opened her eyes. A figure parted the crowd. Hat brim low, coat dusted with snow, jaw carved like stone. He didn't look at the people who shrank back from him. He looked only at her. The crowd murmured uneasily. Whispers rippled from one face to the next. Jackson. Everyone knew the name. A man with cattle, with scars, with his own ghosts. A man who bowed to no one. He stopped in front of her. The cold stung deeper in the pause. His gaze met hers. For the first time in weeks, her chest didn't feel empty. Slowly, carefully, he raised a hand, not like the others who had reached for her with hunger or cruelty. His fingers brushed her jaw, callous but steady, tilted her face so she could not look away. Gasps hissed through the crowd. "Martha," he said, his voice low, carrying enough weight to still the square. "Look at me." Her throat tightened. She wanted to turn away, to whisper, "Don't look at me." But his hand held her gently, and his eyes refused to waver. And then, without warning, without hesitation, he dropped to one knee. The frozen dirt crunched beneath him. The crowd's jeers strangled into silence. His voice rose, not loud but steady. "Be my wife." The words slammed into her chest harder than any insult. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her throat burned. Tears pricked hot at the corners of her eyes. Not from the cold, but from the cruelty of hope. The square was still. Even the wind held its breath. Behind him, men shifted, muttering. "He's lost his mind," one whispered. "Taking her?" "That one." Her father's face twisted red. He shoved through the circle until he was nearly nose to nose with Jackson. His breath stank of whiskey. "She's mine to sell," he snarled. "You don't know what she is, what she's done. She's filth. She'll rot you like she rotted me." Martha's breath hitched. His words were knives she'd swallowed for years. Rot. Filth. Curse. Jackson stood slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. He shrugged his coat from his shoulders and wrapped it around her trembling frame. The wool was heavy, warm, swallowing her bruises and shame. Then with calm hands he untied the rope. The rope fell away. Her wrists throbbed red and raw, blood rushing back to her fingers. She nearly collapsed, but his arm caught her, steady, unshakable. "She's not yours," Jackson said, his voice sharp as steel. "Not anymore." The crowd shifted. No one laughed now. Even the drunkest man stood quiet. Jackson guided her gently forward. Each step through the circle was slow, deliberate, like a man leading someone sacred through a battlefield. Faces blurred. Eyes dropped. No one dared stop them. Her father shouted after them, spittle freezing on his beard. "You'll regret this. Both of you. She's a curse. A curse." But his voice grew smaller with every step away. At the edge of town, Jackson whistled once, low. A horse broke from the hitching rail and trotted to him. With one swift motion, he lifted her onto the saddle. She clutched the coat tighter around herself, trembling from something deeper than the cold. Then he swung up behind her, one arm firm around her waist, holding her upright as a horse carried them toward the open road. The town shrank behind them. Snow fell heavier now, erasing their tracks almost as soon as they formed. Martha pressed her face into the coat, her tears soaking the wool. She didn't know where they were going. She didn't know why he'd chosen her. But for the first time in her life, the road ahead felt wider than the road behind. And for the first time in years, Martha allowed herself a single, trembling thought. Maybe she was worth saving. The snow swallowed their tracks almost as quickly as they made them. Martha clutched the coat tighter around her shoulders. The heavy wool still warm from Jackson's body. His arm held her steady in the saddle, his chest solid at her back. She could hear the rhythm of his breathing, calm and even, as though what had just happened in Millfield was nothing at all. For her, it was everything. Her heart wouldn't stop racing. Shame and hope fought inside her chest. Two enemies locked in a war she could not win. Every insult from the crowd clung to her skin like frostbite, but underneath them, buried and stubborn, the word wife pulsed like a wound that refused to close. They rode in silence. The road stretched white ahead, a tunnel of pines bending heavy with snow. Martha couldn't bring herself to look up. She tucked her bare feet into the folds of the coat, hiding them from the cold, hiding them from him. She wanted to ask why. Why had he stepped forward? Why her? But her throat was tight, and her lips trembled too much to form the words. Instead, Jackson spoke first. "You'll catch your death without shoes," he said simply, not as scolding, not as pity, but as if it were the most obvious truth in the world. She almost laughed, though it came out more like a sob. Shoes. As if shoes could fix what was broken. As if covering her feet could hide the scars she carried everywhere else. They rode another mile before he slowed the horse to a walk. Snowflakes drifted down, catching in her tangled hair. She felt the weight of his gaze, even though he hadn't turned his head. "You hungry?" he asked. The question startled her. No man had ever asked her that. Men had asked for plenty, her silence, her body, her obedience, but never if she was hungry. Her lips parted, but her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Yes." He nodded once, nothing more, as though that single word was all he needed. Minutes passed, the only sound the crunch of hooves against frozen ground. Then, in the distance, smoke curled upward from a chimney. A cabin, tucked deep in the trees. Her stomach knotted. A trap? Another transaction? She didn't know this man. She didn't know what he wanted. As the horse drew closer, the cabin took shape. 3 rooms at most, smoke steady from a chimney, light glowing warm through frosted windows. A barn stood nearby, the dark silhouette of a horse shifting inside. Jackson swung down first, his boots sinking into snow. His hand rose to her waist, offering steadiness without force. She froze, her body stiff, every muscle screaming to run. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. The gentleness in his tone made it worse. She was used to anger, to shouting, to fists. Kindness was foreign, dangerous, something she didn't know how to survive. Still trembling, she let him lift her down. Her feet hit the snow, and the cold stabbed up her legs like knives. She gasped, staggering, but his arm caught her again, steady. He guided her to the door, then pushed it open and stepped aside. Warmth spilled out. Firelight flickered against wooden walls. The smell of cedar smoke rich and inviting. A table stood with a steaming bowl of stew and a tin cup of water, as though he had prepared for her. Her heart raced faster. Prepared. For her. She hovered at the threshold, unable to cross. Her father's voice screamed in her head, "You're filth. You'll rot everything you touch." But Jackson didn't push. He only waited. Finally, on shaking legs, she stepped inside. The warmth hit like a wave, nearly knocking her down. She sank into the coat, gripping it as though it were the only thing tethering her to this world. Jackson shut the door against the wind. Then he moved with quiet precision, setting a kettle near the fire, laying a towel and basin by the hearth. His hands were rough, his motions practiced, as though he had lived a long time in silence. Her eyes darted to the table, to the food, to the clean blankets folded on the bench. Nothing about it looked cruel. Nothing about it looked like a trap, and that terrified her more than anything. At last, She found her voice, sharp from fear. Are you doing this because you pity me? Jackson straightened slowly, his eyes finding hers. His expression didn't change. No, he said. I'm doing this because you deserve to be treated like a person. The words broke her. Her knees gave way before she knew she was falling. The coat pulled around her as she sank to the floor, covering her face with both hands. The tears came fast, hot, uncontrollable. She had cried before, but never like this. Not from pain, not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of someone's kindness. Jackson turned his back, giving her dignity in her breaking. He stoked the fire, silent, steady. For the first time in years, Martha cried because someone saw her as human. And for the first time in years, she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she could be. The tears slowed, but they didn't stop. They slipped hot down her cheeks, carving clean lines to the dirt on her face. She didn't bother to wipe them away. For once, no one mocked her for crying. When her sobs softened into shaky breaths, Martha lowered her hands. The room glowed gold from the fire, shadows dancing along the wooden beams. Jackson had moved to the corner, stacking log beside the hearth, his back turned as if he understood she needed space to break apart unseen. She pulled the coat tighter around her, its weight anchoring her trembling body. Her wrists still throbbed from the rope. She rubbed them absent-mindedly, staring into the flames until her vision blurred again. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was careful, like glass neither dared to break. Finally, Jackson spoke. His voice was even, as if he'd been waiting for the right moment. There's stew on the table. Her head lifted, startled. He wasn't looking at her. He was pouring hot water into the basin, steam rising. Eat, he said. You'll need strength. Strength. The word fell foreign on her skin. She had been called many things, but never strong. She rose slowly, legs stiff from cold and fear. At the table, the smell of stew, meat, onions, herbs wrapped around her, rich and warm. She picked up the spoon with shaking hands. The first sip burned her tongue, but she didn't stop. She ate until her stomach hurt. Jackson didn't sit across from her. He stayed by the fire, cleaning the rifle, as though the sight of her hunger was something private, something he wouldn't intrude on. When she finished, her voice came small, almost broken. Why? He didn't pretend not to understand. His hand still on the rifle. He looked at her, steady, because I won't let them treat you like that. Her throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't know who she was, what she'd done, that she wasn't worth the risk. But the words tangled, and all she managed was a whisper. You don't know me. His gaze didn't waver. Then let me? Her chest clenched. The simple weight of those 4 words threatened to break her again. That night, she lay on a cot near the fire, wrapped in blankets, so warm she nearly wept from the feel of them. But sleep didn't come easy. The flames crackled, pulling her back into memory. 10 years ago, the fire had started in her family's kitchen. She had been 10 years old, standing on a stool to stir a pot of stew. Grease spilled, flames leapt, curtains ignited. She remembered screaming, the smoke, her sister's small voice calling her name. Then heat, choking silence, and waking days later with her face wrapped in linen. Her sister never woke. Her mother died weeks later, and her father, he turned crueler with every passing year, his grief curdling into hatred aimed squarely at her. You should have burned. The words haunted her, louder in the dark than the crackling fire. She woke gasping, sweat chilling her skin despite the blankets. Jackson was at the table, sharpening a knife, his head lifting at her sound. Their eyes met in the glow. He didn't speak. He didn't move toward her. He only watched, steady, as if to say, I'm here. You're not alone. And for some reason, that was enough to calm her racing heart. The days passed slowly, softened by routine. Jackson rose early, tending the animals. Martha, still wary, moved carefully through the cabin, sweeping floors, cooking when she could, feeding chickens with trembling hands. Little things, small, steady things that reminded her of who she had been before the fire, before the shame. Yet the scar still felt like a brand. She avoided mirrors. She avoided his eyes. She wore scarves to hide the jagged skin that stretched across her cheek. One morning, she thought he had gone to the barn. She removed the scarf to wash it by the basin. The air stung her exposed skin, but the privacy was a relief. She dipped her hands in water, rubbing warmth into her fingers. Then the door creaked. She turned, startled. Jackson stood in the doorway, boots dusted with snow. His eyes froze on her uncovered face. Her breath hitched. Panic surged. "Don't look at me like that," she snapped, voice trembling. His brow furrowed, confused. "Like what?" "Like the others," she said, backing away. "Like I disgust you." He stepped forward instinctively. "Anna!" Her hands shook. "You said I was beautiful, but you lied. Now you see me, really see me." Her voice cracked. "You'll turn away like they all did." The room went still. The fire popped softly. Her scar burned as if the flames had returned to claim her. Jackson closed the door behind him, slow and calm. Then he crossed the space, one steady step at a time. She pressed against the table, heart hammering. "I said, don't look at me," she whispered again, desperate, pleading. But he did. He stopped inches away. His eyes locked not on the scar, not on the wound, but on her. Gently, he lifted a hand. She flinched, but his palm was steady, warm as it cupped her cheek. His thumb brushed the burn's curve. "I'm not afraid," he said quietly. "This scar doesn't make you ugly. It proves you survived." Her eyes blurred with tears. She shook her head, confused, broken. "Why would you say that?" "Because it's true." And then, without urgency, without force, he leaned down and pressed his lips to the scar. Not her lips, not her hand. The scar itself. Her world stopped. No one had ever touched that part of her without flinching. No one had ever dared kiss it as if it deserved affection instead of shame. When he pulled back, he asked for nothing. He turned, added another log to the fire, and went on with his quiet work. Behind him, Martha touched her cheek. It still burned, but not from memory, from something else entirely. The cabin no longer felt safe. After her father rode away, leaving only the echo of his threat, Martha sat by the fire with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. Jackson moved with the same steady calm as always, stacking wood, checking the rifle, but she could see the storm brewing behind his eyes. He was planning, preparing. She couldn't stop shaking. "You don't know him," she whispered. Her voice cracked, brittle as glass. Jackson glanced at her. "I know enough." "No," she said louder now, desperate. "You don't. He won't let this go. He'll drink. He'll stew. He'll gather men who hate you more than they hate me. And he'll come back. And when he does, he'll kill you." And then, her throat closed. She couldn't finish. Jackson set down the log in his hands. He crouched in front of her, steady as the earth. "Then he'll have to go through me first." Her tears spilled hot. "Why? Why would you risk everything for me?" His gaze held hers. "Because you're worth it." Her chest clenched, the words cutting sharper than any insult she had endured in Millfield. She turned away, pressing her fists against her eyes. Worth it. She had never been worth anything to anyone. Not her father, not the men who used her, not even herself. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the cabin made her flinch. Every gust of wind felt like hooves on the snow. She lay awake, staring at the scarred beams overhead, until the fire burned low. In the silence, memories returned. She saw her sister's small hand slipping from hers in the flames, her father's red eyes when he said you should have burned instead. She heard the laughter of the men who had lined up with coins, calling her names that stuck to her skin like tar. She pulled the blanket over her head and shook until her chest ached. Jackson's voice came soft in the dark. "You're safe here." Her throat tightened. "You can't promise that." "I can promise I won't leave you," he said. For the first time in years, she wanted to believe someone. Days passed heavy with waiting. Jackson worked outside, mending fences, chopping wood, riding the perimeter of the land with his rifle slung across his back. Martha tried to keep busy inside, cooking, cleaning, but her hands trembled, dropping spoons, spilling water, breaking a cup that shattered across the floor. When she bent to pick up the shards, blood welled from her palm. She froze, breath shallow. The sight of her own blood dragged her back to the fire, to her sister's scream, to the nights when her father's fists left her bruised and broken. Her chest heaved. Jackson was there in an instant, taking her hand, wrapping it in cloth with a gentleness that undid her. She wanted to pull away, to hide, but his hands were steady, his touch careful. He didn't scold. He didn't flinch. "You've carried too much pain alone," he said quietly. Her lips trembled. "It's all I've ever known." He looked at her, steady, as though his gaze alone could hold her together. "Then let me carry it with you." Her tears fell freely. She pressed her bandaged hand against his chest, feeling the solid beat of his heart, and whispered, "I don't know how." "You don't have to," he murmured. "Just don't run from me." For a moment, she believed him. For a moment, the cabin felt like sanctuary again. But peace never lasted. It was dusk when the dogs barked again, low, guttural, warning. Jackson grabbed his rifle, moving to window. Martha's stomach twisted. She didn't need to look to know. Her father was back. This time there were 6 men. Torches burned in their hands, flames flickering against the snow. They spread out around the cabin like wolves circling prey. Martha's knees buckled. "He'll kill us," she whispered. Jackson's jaw tightened. He loaded the rifle with calm precision. "Not if I stop him first." Outside, her father's voice rang out, drunk and venomous. "Jackson, I warned you. Hand her over, or we burn this place with both of you inside." Martha's chest heaved. She saw the torches. She smelled smoke in her memory. Heard her sister's screams. Fire. Always fire. She clutched Jackson's arm. "Please, don't fight them. Don't die for me." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and his eyes were not calm now. They burned. "Martha, you're not something to be handed over. You're not theirs anymore. Do you hear me?" Tears blurred her vision. "If you die, it will be my fault." He cupped her face firm, his thumb brushing her scar. "No, if I die, it will be because I chose to stand. For you." Her breath caught. In that moment, she realized something terrifying. She loved him. Fiercely, desperately. And the thought of losing him was worse than any shame she had ever carried. The men outside shouted, jeering. A torch arced through the air and landed against the barn. Flames licked at the wood, smoke curling skyward. The horses screamed. Martha's body shook. The firelight painted the cabin walls red. Memories crashed over her, but this time Jackson's voice anchored her. "Stay here," he said, rifle in hand. She grabbed his sleeve, sobbing. "Don't leave me." His gaze softened, and for the first time, his voice broke. "Then stay with me." The door creaked as he stepped out, and Martha followed, barefoot in the snow, coat clutched tight. The flames roared higher, the barn catching, the smell of burning hay choking the air. Her father sat on his horse, torch raised, his face lit with fire. "Last chance, girl. Come here or watch him die." The men laughed, rifles gleaming in the firelight. Martha trembled. Every part of her wanted to run back inside, to hide, to be small. But something in her broke open, something that had been buried under years of shame and fear. She stepped forward, past Jackson, her voice rising above the crackle of flames. "No." The laughter stopped. Even the horses stilled. Her father's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" She lifted her chin, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I said no. I'm not yours. Not anymore." The silence was deafening. Jackson's hand brushed hers, steady, unshakable. Her father's face twisted with rage. He raised his rifle. The men tensed. For a breathless moment, the world held its breath. And then, the barn door burst open. Jackson's horse bolted free, flames chasing at its heels, scattering the men. The confusion broke the moment like glass. Jackson moved, rifle raised, steady aim. A shot cracked, echoing through the trees. Her father's rifle flew from his hands. He screamed in fury, reeling back in the saddle. The men cursed, their bravado crumbling. One by one, they turned their horses, retreating into the dark. The torches hissed in the snow. smoke curling upward. The barn burned, but the cabin still stood. Martha collapsed to her knees, sobbing into the snow. Jackson knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. His voice was ragged now, breaking. "You're safe. You're safe." But Martha knew safety was fragile. The fire still burned. The threat was not over. And yet, in that moment, pressed against a man who had risked everything, she felt something she had never known before. Hope. The fire in the barn had burned itself to a black husk. Smoke still curled into the night sky, staining the stars. Martha sat in the snow, clutching Jackson's coat around her like armor, her breath rising in shaky clouds. Jackson stood nearby, his rifle still in his hands, his chest rising and falling like a man who refused to let his guard down. But both of them knew this wasn't finished. Her father had fled, but not defeated. Men like him didn't stop. They regrouped, gathered more wolves, sharpened their knives. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was a pause before another storm. The next days were thick with tension. Martha helped rebuild what the fire had destroyed, her hands raw from hauling water and chopping char beams. She worked until her arms shook, trying to prove she wasn't the burden her father had named her. Jackson didn't stop her, but he watched, always watched. One evening, as the sun sank blood-red across the horizon, she found him sitting alone by the fence line, staring into the distance. His rifle leaned against the post. His shoulders were heavy, his jaw tight. "You think he'll come back," she said quietly. Jackson didn't look at her, but his silence was answer enough. Her chest ached. She sank into grass beside him, the damp seeping into her dress. "Then let me leave. If I go, he'll stop chasing you." At that, he turned. His eyes were sharp, almost angry. "Don't say that." "It's true," she whispered. "He wants me, not you. If I go, he'll leave you be." Jackson shook his head. "If you go, he wins. And I lose you." Her throat tightened. "I'm not worth losing your life." His hand caught hers, firm, grounding. "Martha, you are the only thing worth losing it for." Tears stung her eyes. She wanted to fight him, to argue, but the words shattered in her mouth. She leaned into him, her head against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. That night, she dreamed of fire again. But this time, when the flames rose, Jackson was there. His hand reached through the smoke, pulling her free. For the first time, she woke from a nightmare with hope instead of despair. The storm broke 3 nights later. It was past midnight when the dogs went wild, their barks cutting through the silence. Jackson was already moving, rifle in hand, eyes sharp. Martha's heart froze. Shadows moved beyond the tree lean, torches flickering like angry stars. More men this time. Too many. Her father's voice rose above them all, drunk, venomous, full of hate. "Jackson, come out, or we burn you alive with her." The words cracked through the night, pulling Martha into a spiral of fear. Her body shook, her breath coming ragged. She saw her sister's face in the fire again, her father's hand swinging in rage. The sneers of men with coins. Jackson's hand found hers. "Stay behind me." But Martha's chest burned. All her life, she had been silent, letting others speak for her, letting shame chain her voice. But not tonight, not after everything. She pushed past him, stepping into the cold. Her bare feet sank into snow, but she didn't care. She faced the torches, the rifles, the man who had called her worthless. "I'm not yours anymore," she screamed, her voice breaking the night. "You hear me? I belong to no one. Not you. Not the men who paid you. Not the whispers in Millfield. No one." The night went still. Even the men holding rifles shifted uneasily. Her father's face twisted in fury. "You ungrateful!" He raised his rifle, but Jackson's shot cracked first. The gun flew from his hands, clattering into the snow. The men shouted, chaos rippling through their ranks. Some turned to run. Others froze, unwilling to die for another man's hatred. Her father staggered, clutching his hand, his eyes burning into hers. "You'll pay for this, girl. You'll rot." Martha's tears streamed hot down her face, but her voice didn't tremble. "No, I'll live." The word struck harder than any bullet. Her father's shoulders sagged. For the first time, she saw the broken man behind the monster, a man so full of bitterness he had drowned everyone around him. He spat into the snow, turned his horse, and rode into the darkness. The others followed, torches vanishing one by one into the night. Silence fell, a silence so deep it felt holy. Martha's knees buckled, but Jackson caught her, his arms wrapping around her, holding her as if he'd never let go. She sobbed into his chest, her body shaking. But this time the tears were not just grief. They were release. The fire still smoldered. The night was still cold. But Martha knew something had ended here, and something new had begun. She lifted her face to Jackson's, her eyes shining with tears. "Why me?" she whispered. He touched her scar, kissed it gently, the way he always did. "Because I see you, all of you, and I'll never stop." Her heart broke open, and for the first time in her life, she let love in. The dawn rose pale and quiet, spreading light across the snow. Smoke drifted from the wreckage of the barn, but the cabin stood. They stood together, and as the sun warmed her face, Martha realized a truth she had never dared believe. She wasn't staying. She wasn't ruined. She was loved, and that love had made her whole. And now, to the audience, if this story touched you, if you felt every heartbeat and every tear, don't leave without showing us. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your words, your presence, they matter more than you know. Because stories like this aren't just told. They're shared, and you're part of it now.